Today's episode is a very special episode in honor of Pregnancy and Infant Awareness Loss Month. I speak with Shay about her multiple pregnancy losses and her pregnancy that was impacted by anencephaly. I understand if you need to skip this episode. While it's a sad story, it is a story of courage and selflessness. I'm grateful to this mom for sharing her story with us. Hi, everyone. You're listening to the Bold Little Minds Momcast, a podcast where we talk to incredible moms who share their unique journey to motherhood, practical tips, and some of our favorite low prep activities so you can enjoy that hot cup of coffee. I'm your host, Krissy. I'm a mom of 2 boys. I'm glad you're here with us, so pop in your earbuds and let's have some fun. Welcome to the Bold Little Minds Momcast. My name is Krissy. I am a stay-at-home mom to 2 young boys, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. Today, I come to you with a very special episode. In honor of Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, our friend Shay is joining us again to share this part of her story. Unfortunately, infant and pregnancy loss is all too common. Either you or someone you know likely has been affected by this. In the United States, about 1 in 175 pregnancies result in a stillbirth. 1 in 4 pregnancies end in a miscarriage. 2% of pregnant people experience repeat miscarriages, and the infant mortality rate varies by ethnicity, being as high as 10.9 per 1,000 live births. Shay shares with us her story of repeat pregnancy loss, but also her story of a pregnancy she carried to term with a baby who had a fatal birth defect. This is an inspirational story of courage and selflessness. I certainly understand that this episode is not for everyone. It's not easy for moms to think about pregnancy and infant loss, so I completely understand if this is an episode you need to skip. Today, 3 versions of this episode are available. You can find the full episode as well as the episode broken up into 2 parts, the regular abridged version that's going to be released on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all of those, as well as a bonus episode. All 3 of these versions are available on my Substack, which is free to access. You can subscribe for free and have the episode sent directly to your mailbox with whatever versions are released on video and audio, as well as a text-based blog summary of the episode. However, you don't have to sign up for the subscription to access the bonus episode or the full-length episode on my Substack. You can find the link to the Substack in my show notes. Shay's son had a condition called anencephaly. In the United States, anencephaly affects 1 in 10,000 newborns. Because most pregnancies with anencephaly end in a miscarriage, it's impossible to know the true number of babies that are affected by this. Anencephaly is a type of neural tube defect that happens when the neural tube doesn't close completely. Almost all babies born with anencephaly die shortly after birth. Globally, it's estimated that the prevalence of anencephaly is 5.1 in 10,000. I'm very grateful that Shay decided to share her story with us today. It's important to understand the reasoning behind the decisions she made and how it impacted her all around. It's also important to know that since that pregnancy, Shay had 2 healthy pregnancies who now are live, healthy baby boys. It can feel so lonely to be impacted by pregnancy and infant loss. If you or someone you know has been affected by anencephaly, just know there are many resources out there available to you. And Shay is more than happy to talk to you if you want somebody to speak with. Again, I understand if this episode is not something for you and you need to stop listening partway through. Either way, please take a moment to hug your babies and the babies in your life a little tighter. And I thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you so much for listening to the Bold Little Minds Momcast. I am here with Shay. Shay was on our show before, and I'm so happy to have her back. Shay is a mom of 4, 15, 13, 3.5, and 1.5. She is an entrepreneur, and we are just so happy to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me back. It's always a blast, and the before and after chats are they're amazing. I live for these chats, so thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, me too. And I agree. Our before and after chats, we talk too long before and probably too long after. But hey, it's all in good fun. So we are here today for a very special episode. This month is Pregnancy and Infancy Loss Awareness Month. And I know that a lot of people have experienced this loss in so many different ways and have so many unique stories. And Shay and I both have had pregnancy losses. But Shay has a special story about a pregnancy that had a fatal birth defect. And I really want to make sure that we take some time to focus in on that part of her story and give that piece of her story some special attention. So today, let's start with talking about where it all began, your love story with your husband. Let's talk about how you met and how you decided to start all over again. Because for everyone who remembers, you both came into this marriage with a child.
Right. So our love story starts with a swipe right. We're one of those Tinder success stories. I was going through a crazy divorce. I was in school full time, working full time. One of my girlfriends is like, you really need to dip your foot in the water. Like, you need to kind of get out there, And she's like, it doesn't have to be anything serious. Just see what you're working with. And I'm like, heck no, like too busy, school, kid, divorce, like no way, I'm a hot mess. Like, no. So we betted on motocross and I lost. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'll just make a profile, but this is like, don't expect anything out of this. Like, I'm always, solo plus zero to anything you invite me to. So I'm on there, and it was a different dating game, of course. And this is at the point where Tinder was like starting to go crazy, and it was becoming a hookup site.
Yeah.
So, I put in my profile like, I'm not here for, one night stands. And, swiping along, lots of lefts, I come across my now husband's profile, and I thought it was sweet. He was like going through divorce, like, I have a 2-year-old daughter, like, I'm not here for an instant wife or one night stand. I'm like, okay, cool. We kind of align. Swipe right, whatever. We started chatting, of course, and I'm like, you know what? This is cool. Someone else who's kind of going through the same things I'm going through. So I didn't expect anything out of it. I was very like cautious to meet. Like, I talked to him for weeks, but it was like an instant, like, we hit it off. And the whole time I'm still going through therapy for my divorce. And I'm telling this therapist, like, who is this guy? It's too good to be true. Like, what is this? Like, this isn't real. Like, this doesn't happen. The more we got to know each other, we realized, oh my God, we got married same year, a week apart. We separated from our spouses literally a month apart. Like, there were so many like parallels in our life. We grew up at an address was the same exact numbers. Someone in his family like founded a very famous river that is also the same name of the town I grew up in, which now our son's named after, of course.
Wow.
But like all of these, like his stepdad's badge number was the last four of my phone number. Like, I had spoken to him on the phone years prior doing an errand for my husband. Like, it just was like all of these things were like, whoa, what? Oh my God, what? Like too good to be true. So, needless to say, we hit it off. We are like the same person. Just he's the male version of me. And he's a little more down to earth and centered. He's not so crazy like I am, but that's not saying a whole lot.
We all need that counterbalance.
Exactly, yin yang. So yeah, we hit it off immediately, and it's a love like no other. It's like, from the day one, like it just felt like too easy,
Yeah.
and 10 years, we're 10 years out now, and I'm like, okay, it hasn't been easy.
Sure.
Here. Like, but I remember thinking like how I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, what is going on? Like, my therapy for my divorce turned into therapy to be accepting of love,
Yeah.
you know? So it was crazy that we met and had the same tastes and everything.
That's so interesting that you say that, to accept love, because that happens so many times is we find someone that's perfect for us and we push them away for whatever reason.
Yeah, yeah. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was
Yeah.
trying to find all the reasons. Like, I wasn't ready. I knew I wasn't
Right.
ready at all. I was just kind of entertaining the idea. And my therapist looked at me and he's like, what do you have to lose?
Mhm.
You have your own place now, you know, you have your life together, your life in order. You need to be willing to accept love and not think that you're not worthy of it. Like, give yourself some grace. This is the healing part. You have to just let it go. So I took his advice, because every week I'd be like, something's gonna happen. Something's not right.
Yeah.
He's gonna be a serial cheater. I don't, like all of these things. I was so ready for the worst thing to happen.
Yeah.
And it never came. I looking back, and there's more similarities and parallels in our life. I could probably go on for hours,
Yeah.
but yeah, long story short, it was it was the swipe right that made
I
forever.
love
So
it. I love it. That's beautiful. Now, how long did it take for you to go from we don't want to rush into a marriage again to, you know what, we're going to get married?
6 years because I was so
Yeah.
non-committal. Like,
Yeah.
it took me 2 years to move in.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, no, I got to make sure my kid is
Yeah.
ready for this. It took a long time of us doing sleepovers and making sure the girls were okay. Like, it was almost like I was looking for any reason, like,
Yeah.
and they just weren't there. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, how could I find something so good,
Mhm.
And I think if you've listened to our last podcast, I think we touched a little bit on that. I was beside myself. We still think about and look back and laugh, and we're like, "Oh my gosh."
I do think it's more than just like non-committal because you had a kid that you need to be
Yeah.
worried about. And we all
Yeah.
been there where we
Mhm.
were in a relationship that felt great and then all of a sudden it didn't. And how
Yeah.
devastating would that be for your child? So I just want to give you credit for
Thank
taking that
you.
time for her and for yourself. I'm sure there were other things going on, but it is important when you have a child to remember it's not just about what's going to make you feel good anymore.
Yeah, and on top of that, like, when I got married the first time, it was supposed to be forever.
Mm,
You go in that first,
right.
for a lot of us today, we go in and we're like, we're never getting divorced. And then for me, I was the one who pulled the eject.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not a healthy place. And so I was the one who did it. So coming from that place, I was scared to start something where I would do that again, like where I would have to leave or have to make a decision. I didn't want to get married. And I made that very clear for a very long time in our relationship where I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to ruin this with a title. I was so scared that if we got married, that was
Yeah.
it. That was when things would turn and things would go wrong. So
Yeah.
it took
Yeah. It
it took
didn't.
it took 6 years
Yeah.
and also took the decision to try to have kids again.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I need healthcare because healthcare is really expensive.
Oh.
And I guess we could try again. And you know what? Let's just do it. We didn't tell anybody. We just went to the beach.
Oh.
We hired someone and we had this, like, I hate to say Jim and Pam from The Office kind of little, like,
Yeah.
sunset wedding with just the three of us and God,
Mhm.
at the beach. And we're like, oh, we'll just do we'll have a big wedding next year. We won't tell anybody. And then COVID happened.
Oh,
So we were married in 2019. COVID happened and we had to come clean. And
by the way.
whoops, we still haven't. And now we have two kids.
Yeah,
So it's like, yeah, well, we'll do it maybe our 10th anniversary, wedding anniversary.
I love that. So the decision to have or start a second round of a family happened before the marriage. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So we had, of course, here we are adults here, having accidents. And we had a really big loss where it I was pretty devastated. It was probably about a year, a little over a year into our relationship, and I was so devastated that I blame myself. Had legitimate PTSD from it. I thought it was me. I went through all of that. My body wasn't working for me. What happened? Like, I didn't expect to be. Why? Birth control failed once again, but yeah, it happened.
Yeah, interesting. So you didn't have a conversation necessarily beforehand. This just happened
No.
and then it sparked in you this like, oh, actually I this is something I do want.
Right, yeah, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, my clock's ticking at this point." Like, again, from the last episode, like, I didn't even know if I wanted to have kids,
Mhm.
right? And then I had a kid because, again, like, birth control didn't work. Birth control does not work for me. Um,
Apparently.
Avi. So after that first loss, he's like, why even put those things in your body? It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Like, we'll figure a way out. Like, don't do it, right? So we kind of were just like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, great. After that first really big loss, it took me probably a good 6 months to finally get better because it gave me, I don't want to say like, I always feel like I'm being dramatic, but I was having like panic attacks
Mhm.
from it because I felt so responsible because I wasn't, watching what I ate, and I blamed myself for the amount of stress that I allowed to accrue in my life, because it was right at the point where my marriage, when we were together, I was still technically married, but separated, of course. And it was right as we were finishing everything. And that's when I lost that first
Mhm.
baby. I was like, this is not the time. And then I went through that whole wave of guilt. As you know, when you lose a baby, it's the waves of guilt. Like, you're trying to find blame, even, and trying to find the reason why, even though sometimes there's just not a reason.
Right.
And for me, I just immediately go to me. Like, it's my fault.
Mm.
I did something. I drove myself crazy about it. I was thinking night and day. I didn't, like, what did I do? How could I do it different? Why that poor baby didn't deserve to die? I went through all of those crazy emotions. I tried to go to counseling, and the male doctor looked at me and he's like, "So you're here because you think you had a miscarriage?" And I just remember, like, how unsensitive.
Mhm.
Don't even get me started on women's health.
Right.
But a therapist, and he's like, "Well, here you go. Here's 5 prescriptions. We're going to give you this so you don't have the panic attacks,
Mhm.
this so you can sleep, this to wake you up in the morning, this to be a mood stabilizer." And it was just like shoving pills down my
Yeah.
throat. And it didn't address anything. It numbed it, but I still thought of it. Like,
Mhm.
I still, you know, at that point, I ended up quitting the job I was at. I ended up just pulling back in life. Luckily, I had a savings and I had my husband, and I took that time to kind of heal.
Yeah.
So, but after that, so going a little more into our journey,
Mhm.
we had 2 more early, very, very early losses. It's like, I don't know for you, I don't know your story, but those losses where, you're pregnant and your body's starting to do that hormonal shift
Mhm.
and change, and you get that positive, and within a week,
Right.
it was over.
Right.
And after 2 of them, I was like, I cannot do this
Yeah.
again. Like, this is too hard. I can't lose another baby. I don't know if I'm going to survive losing another child.
Mhm.
And again, right back into that guilt cycle. Like, I was the one who caused this. I must have willed this to
Right.
happen.
Right.
And it ate at me for a while. So I finally was like, you know what? I'm done. We're not trying again. We're not even going to entertain it. So I'm going to track my cycles. We're not doing this. At this point, he was like, okay, this is weird. Like, we need to go see doctors to make sure we're healthy, because if you ever change your
Right.
mind and we decide when you're 40
Mhm.
you need that baby, let's be prepared. So we ended up going to he went to his doctor, I went to mine. They wanted to run all these tests on me, and they're like, okay, so this is secondary infertility, because you had already had a very successul pregnancy,
Mhm.
your very first, and you were on birth control. So that tells us,
Right.
you know,
Proof of
you're
concept. We know it can.
yeah, and your daughter's 5 years old. So that's really the odds of something happening within inside of your body are not that high right now.
Mhm.
So the doctor looked at me and he's like, you know what? You need to have your husband go get checked out.
Mm.
So he went to his doctor, and we found out that he had a 0 count.
Oh,
So
wow.
we're like, hold on a second. Like, what? Wait,
Right.
what? So my husband, and I do have his permission to share this part of our story because it's very important, is on, it has TRT, like, he has a hormone replacement therapy.
Okay.
He's on testosterone. He had been injured overseas in Iraq,
Mm.
and it did something with his pituitary, and his body stopped producing testosterone for him.
Mm.
So, he had to take that testosterone therapy. What they didn't tell him is that eventually that would make him go sterile
Wow.
when he had it. So at 26 years old, he's having to take injections because his body's not doing what it's supposed to. And no one thought to mention, hey, you're going to be sterile while you're on this medicine.
Wow.
So we find this out, and I'm like, okay, okay. Like, I brought that information back to my doctor, and my doctor's like, so what it sounds like happened is you had basically a miracle.
Mhm.
The fact that you were even getting pregnant is a miracle. It just takes one.
Yep.
And unfortunately, with the hormone replacement therapy, the sperm can be misshapen or
Abnormal.
yeah, abnormal. I can't think of the word right now,
Right.
brain mom fog. But yeah, they're not healthy,
Mhm.
viable. So he's like, it doesn't matter what you're going to do. If that's a big part of it, it might not happen. I was like, okay, so what can we do in the event? And he's like, well, you could do IVF, you can do IUI. Yeah, I'm not even ready. I'm not even worried about it. After hearing that, his doctor was like, hey, let's wait 3 months, right?
Mhm.
We're going to wait 3 months. I want you to stop taking your shots,
Mm.
which was horrible for him
Yeah.
because not having a man needs testosterone
Mhm.
in his body. And it comes with weight gain. It comes with mood swings. It comes with, they become a little more estrogen dominant, and it really messes with their psyche. And it's really rough. So the doctor tells him to wait. And then, like, if you ever want to conceive kids, he'll probably have to not be on his shots. So during this 3 month waiting trial, we had two major losses in our family. My grandfather died, and then 3 weeks later to the day, his grandfather died.
Oh,
My grandfather, it was unexpected. His grandfather, it was within 2 months of knowing something was wrong, he was
mm,
gone. During this time, we're going up to Oregon where his grandfather lived. We were there for a while visiting before, and then my husband had to dip out, and we came back. He had to go back, and he made it there in time. And then my grandfather, on the day his grandfather died, I called my grandmother, who's in Florida. And a couple of weeks had gone by, which is not, it wasn't out of the ordinary for our relationship. I call my grandmother, and it's like, she didn't recognize me. And I was like, oh, are you okay, Granny, what's wrong? And she's like, Papa died. And I was like, when? Like, when did this happen? And she said 3 weeks ago. And like, I just felt like our whole
right.
entire world within two phone calls
Yeah.
had completely just
Yeah.
crumbled. Like, oh my gosh. And my grandmother was so out of it that she was a little older. Like, technology was so
Yeah.
foreign to her that she just reclused, and she didn't want to bug me to tell me the bad news while Brian's
Yep.
grandfather was going through it, and she was trying to preserve me. So then that turned into pickup, and here we are
Yep.
off to Florida and out there for 2 weeks and trying to help manage that. So it was crazy. It was a crazy time in our life, and we were grieving. And so after the 2 weeks are up, we finally get home. And the day after, I was a little sick on that trip, and I couldn't understand, like, what's going on, like my gallbladder,
Yeah.
because I had gallbladder issues.
Oh,
While we were on that trip, right before we left, he's like, "Do you think you could be pregnant?" And I'm like, "Don't play with
don't.
me.
We're not doing this again.
Don't. I know where you sleep.
Yeah.
Like, no." And he's like, "I don't know why, but I just have this weird feeling. And we fly back home. The next day, I take a pregnancy test, and it's just immediately like positive.
Ooh.
And I'm like in shock,
Yeah.
just literally staring at
Yeah.
this test, like, oh my gosh, like, okay, here we go again.
Buckle up. Yeah.
I remember telling myself, like, okay, don't get excited
Right.
because we don't make past a week. I made a doctor appointment. At the doctor appointment, I was like, is there anything we can do? I started to get that panic feeling, like, what can we do? What is there anything? She's like, no, you just gotta let it be.
Mhm.
Like, my prior pregnancies, we never caught before I had the loss. It was always like the after.
Mm.
So it was kind of like, okay, well, let's start documenting. We'll do a blood
Mhm.
test, and I'll have you go once a
Yeah.
week. So that way you'll know something's up before you don't,
Mhm.
and before it happens naturally. So I took that first blood test. My levels were great. I took that second blood test. My levels were doubled. I took another test, and they were just off the charts. So we were like, oh my gosh, we lost our grandfathers. Like, this has to be a silver lining.
Yeah.
This is too coincidental.
Right.
So we kept it hush. We didn't say anything. And my girls at this time were bullying me to like have a brother or sister for them. It was just a constant, when are you going to have one? When are you going to have one? So it was just this weird feeling of like they knew
Yeah.
intuitively, like, are you feeling okay? Because I got sick really early. I'd be sitting at the dinner table and I'd be like, "Brr," you know.
Mhm. Did you have
Um,
symptoms with your other losses? Or was it
um, So with the first one, not until right before I lost, I
Mhm.
was getting a little bit of dizzy and nausea. So with my daughter, I had nothing. I had maybe 2 days of morning sickness the entire pregnancy. I could have skipped fields, skipping in fields of daisies, like could have been professionally
Yeah.
pregnant. It was just the most beautiful thing in my life. And then with the others, it was like I would start getting a little dizzy, but I don't know if that's coincidental because I'm a dizzy person as it is.
Sure.
So,
So they didn't
um,
necessarily recognize it from like, "Oh, here we go again." It's just like,
no,
these are the
it was like
classic
this.
signs.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
and for them, I think they were, like, more intuitive of,
Mhm.
like, something's up because I'm a very open book mom, and I can't mislead my children very well,
Sure.
like, I'm a very honest,
Yeah.
like, "Nope, this is how it is, this is life."
Mhm.
So they had kind of like an inkling of something was off, and then I was getting sick. I made my favorite meal, chicken parm, and we, get to the table, and I take 2 bites, and I lose it. Like, "Oh my god, can't do this." They're enjoying it. My husband's one of his favorites, so he was like, "Oh my god." Lost it. I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna go lay down. I think I have a flu. That's what it is. It's a
Yeah.
flu." And then, I know what it is.
And how
And,
old were they? Like 9 and 10, something like that?
5 and 7.
5 and 7. Okay.
5 and
Okay,
7.
so the
So they were 5 and
seven-year-old
7.
would know probably more than the five-year-old, but still.
But no, that 5-year-old's very intuitive. She's like, "Are you pregnant? Are you gonna have a baby?" And I'm like, "Why are you asking me that?" "You're getting a little fat." "Okay, thank
Thank
you."
you.
That's weird to say I'm bloated, okay?
Yeah, right.
At this point, I'm throwing away food all the like, on a daily
Yeah.
basis. And then I get to the point where I am so sick, I cannot move. I was diagnosed with hyperemesis. I was losing weight rapidly. The only thing that I could keep down was Dr. Pepper over crushed ice, maybe once a day if I was lucky, having to get IVs. But all during that, I remember at one point thinking something's wrong,
Yeah.
having this feeling like something's not right, something's wrong, this is a mistake. That was like a recurring thing that I would feel. Like, I remember one time my husband and I got one of our very few fights where I was just an emotional basket case, and I'm like, this is a mistake, we shouldn't be doing this,
Mhm.
non-committal over here. I just thought this was it. This is where most couples go downhill, is right after a baby. So I really had my doubts and my regrets, and this wasn't even supposed to happen. What do you mean? But I should be grateful because we just lost our grandfathers. We didn't tell the girls. We surprised them with a surprise photo shoot where
Oh.
we had got a little like a big sign printed, and we're like, we're doing family photos this year, and the two photographers were in on it, and they turned around, and here we are holding a sign, "You're going to be big
Yeah.
sisters." And it was just so magical. It was such a magical day. We were all of us were in tears. They're crying, and I have the whole pictures
Aw.
where I'm showing them the ultrasounds, but the whole time feeling like something's wrong.
Yeah.
And then getting those ultrasounds and seeing them, and they're like, "Where's the head and where's this?" And by this time I'm about 10 weeks,
Mhm.
or no, was I? No, I was 12 weeks. That's right, because we were waiting to make sure I got past that 12-week point.
Yeah, and it's
But my
interesting too because, like, sorry to interrupt you, but pregnancy after loss,
Yeah.
you are like, always are gonna think something doesn't feel right
Yeah,
and something's wrong and
right.
something's gonna go south. So, like, is this intuition? Is this really something, or is this just my anxiety?
Right. And within that, there were a few times where I had gone to the hospital because I was so dehydrated,
Mm,
like throwing up, like
yeah.
couldn't get off the bathroom floor. And every time I would go, I'm like, something's wrong, something's not right. I would tell them this every time. Something's not right. Can you check to make sure the baby's okay?
Mhm.
And again, this is the very early stages, 6 to 10 weeks before they put me on the infusions, of course. And they check and they're like, everything's okay. The heartbeat's great. Yeah, look,
Right.
no, look, healthy baby. It's moving around. Like, and I remember thinking, like, it was like at a 10-week, at the 10-week scan, I'm like, something's weird.
Mhm.
Like, this ultrasound doesn't look like my last one. And when I inquired about it, I had to have a whole OB transfer because I was driving too far, so I got a closer OB. It was their 10-week scan that I just didn't feel right.
Mhm.
And they're like, oh, it's nothing. Sometimes they're a little crazy. Sometimes you'll do it today and it'll be off. And then in 2 days, it'll be a completely different scan. You're just having anxiety from your prior losses. Try to take it easy, take a rest. So, okay, I'm telling myself, yeah, this is me. I'm just having doomsday and I'm just waiting for that other shoe to drop. I need to let it go. This isn't going to happen. So we do this great big reveal. And my daughters are just over the moon, elated. We're happy. We tell everybody in the family, and we kind of got mixed, like, because we weren't married. His family's very traditional and old
Sure.
school. And we're like, okay, cool. Well, we're excited. So,
Right.
this is the way we want to live our life. When I got the pictures back a week later, at this point, I'm 13 weeks. And I'm like, I'm going to hold off on posting those. I don't know. Something with
Mhm.
like inside was like, yeah, just hold off, right? Again, here I am thinking something's going to go wrong. I'm 14 weeks. I go to the doctor. I am having a routine scan. I was having a little bit of spotting. So they called me in. They had me go in. And during the ultrasound, the OB's face goes, and I'm like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, nothing. And I'm like, no. No, you made a
Yep.
face. What's going on? You made a face. I saw that. And she's like, oh, nothing's wrong. Like, everything's okay. And I'm like, she's like, the baby's heart beats nice and strong, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, you made a face. I saw your eyes get wide. I can read your body language. But okay. And I think at that point, we went home and I'm like, don't get your hopes up.
Yeah.
I don't know what she
Mm.
saw, but it wasn't good.
Mhm.
I go to bed that night. I wake up and I go to the hospital and it was surreal. I was just in this fog and I'll never forget. I'm sitting there, like in a little TMI, like you're sitting there in basically a homemade diaper because
Mm.
you're hemorrhaging. And I'm sitting across the nurse's booth and I'm hearing how, oh yeah, my wife, yeah, we're having a baby and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, we know what it is. We got the email and we don't know if we should click it. My wife wants to look at it. And I'm sitting there like, can you guys read the room?
Right.
Because you just talked to me and I said, hello, I think I have a threatened miscarriage. Like, read the room, like, be sensitive, or have that conversation, not where your people in the ER can overhear that. So they call me back. They want to set me in a hallway, and I'm like, not happening. You guys are gonna have to do a pelvic exam. You're not. I'm not.
Right.
No, we're not doing this. I need a room. I don't care if it's a utility closet
Yeah.
at this point. So it was just like one thing after another. I'm like, why am I having to fight so hard? And then thinking, she saw something. She could have told me. She could have given me a heads up. Why didn't she say anything? So I get the ultrasound and we're chit chatting and I'm looking at the screen, the baby, he's like, well, the baby's got a healthy heart rate. He goes quiet. And this whole time I'm texting my now husband. At the time wasn't.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I can see his heart rate. I'm relieved. I'm
Yeah.
seeing the baby bring the thumb to the mouth, like
Yep.
all these little moments. And I'm like, but I can't see his face. Like, I don't know, like maybe it's just the angle. Like I can't see his face. So I asked, is everything okay? He's like, yeah, I'm just gonna get a couple more pictures. And like if you've ever had an ultrasound like that, that like it comes down
Mhm.
because if you've had the good ultrasounds that are all chitty chatty and oh, do you have any names? And this was not the case. So they put me in a different room. And I'm like, oh gosh, like
Yeah.
what's this about? Like, okay, am I gonna have a baby with Down syndrome? I can handle a baby with Down
Right.
syndrome. Like, is that it? Like, whatever. And I remember like going through these scenarios in my head of like, uh, whatever it is, is he missing a limb?
Right.
Or, I didn't know what was a he at this point.
Right. Right.
Is he missing a limb? Is, is there a deformity? We can live with it. We're
Right.
unconditional love. Like this baby will have the best life. And the doctor comes in and sits on the bed and grabs the box of tissues. And I'm like, oh,
Oh,
here we
jeez.
go. And she's like, I'm really sorry. Your baby's not compatible with life. And I'm like, what do you mean? Your baby has a condition called anencephaly where the neural tube didn't close, very similar to spina bifida. Their brain didn't fully develop and they didn't fully form a skull cap and a cranium. And I'm really sorry, but your baby's not compatible with life.
Yeah.
You know, here you need to follow up with your doctor. So I remember just sitting there like in this state of shock, and she's handing me tissues, and I'm like, I'm not even, I, not a tear. I couldn't squeeze a tear out if I wanted to. Like, this is it. Like, oh my gosh, like,
Yeah.
what? Like, how did that happen? Like, and I'll never forget driving home. I didn't even, I texted my husband, like, oh, hey, I'm on my way home. And he's like, everything okay? And I'm like, we'll talk when I get
Yeah.
home. And I ran 2 red lights, just I was so out of it, like, there's literally 5 lights from the hospital to my house, And, I walk in the door and I'm like, "Here it is. Our baby's not gonna make it." Um, and it was just I can't express to you how defeated I felt in that moment of, like, "Hold on a second." I felt something was wrong. I kept telling the doctor something was wrong. The doctor made a face yesterday during the ultrasound and told me everything was okay and everything was going to be all right and not to worry about it. And I felt gaslit because I had these feelings inside. And now the baby's not going to make it. So, there we went, my husband it was like, okay, we need to go to the doctor ASAP. They got us in, I went to the hospital at 2 in the morning, got back at 7 in the morning. By 3 p.m. in the afternoon, we had another doctor appointment. Um, and this time they ushered us to a perinatologist. And that was the point where I think for me, she's doing the ultrasound. She's doing like an anatomy scan at this point from feet up. And um, I see that it's a little boy, and I just
Yeah.
lost my mind because um, I didn't I didn't know I could be a mom. And when I had my daughter, I wasn't sure I was going to be a mom. And I most definitely didn't think I could be a good girl mom because of my relationship with my mother. And so I wanted to have all boys because boys are easy, right? Like, I don't know how to be a good girl mom, and that's far from the truth,
Sure.
thankfully. But here I am. I have a little boy, and it's just completely snatched away from me. So within that, they're when I ask them, well, what are our options? Like, is there a chance that maybe this is wrong? You guys have it wrong. It can develop. No, 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 no. You need to get an abortion, is what the doctor
Yeah.
told me. The same doctor that had that surprised look on her face the day before is now and told me everything was fine is now telling me you need a DNC and we need to schedule it immediately. And again, where do these people learn their bedside manners?
Yeah.
Incredibly unempathetic. And, um, as a mom, when you're told something can't happen and then it happens and you think it's this just a miracle, like, oh my gosh, I'm walking around and there's a miracle growing inside of me. And then be told, just kidding,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. Um, it really messes you up. And I would, so we came home and we told people, and we just weren't prepared with how this all would have played out. And so we told everybody, and it was just mixed feelings all around. I got tired real quick after a day of telling everybody the story, so I made this post on Facebook, and I'm like, hey, just treat this like a normal pregnancy for now, like, because at this point a lot of people knew we were pregnant, but I didn't want to hear, how are you doing, how's
Right.
the baby, is it a boy or a girl? Like, I wanted to get ahead of that,
Mm-hmm.
for the mental health of our family. we had to sit the girls down and tell them.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, I decided that there had to be more to be done than just a DNC. And coming from that medical background, I was like, well, what if we could donate his organs? Like, what if we could prevent another family from feeling the heartache that we feel now? So we sat down with the girls, we told them, and at this point, I looked at my husband and I'm like, I don't know where you stand on this. And I'm really sorry that I'm kind of taking the lead on this, but I am not going to get an abortion. And I'm like, it's really hard for me right now when the first signs of life, if you walk across somebody laying on the ground, what's the first thing you do? You look for signs of life, which are a heartbeat
Mm-hmm.
and bleeding or breathing. And you look for that heartbeat. And my son inside of me has a heartbeat. So who am I? Who am I to decide when it should stop beating? And it being at this point a second trimester abortion or DNC or whatever they want to call it.
Sure.
It wasn't even like an option that I could be induced.
It was, yeah.
So for me, it seemed very barbaric
Right.
to go in and basically rip this baby out of me that is very much loved and wanted. So I told him, I'm like, I'm really sorry. I can't go through with it. And I'm like, I can go away. If I need to go away, I'll go away for the next few months. I can do this alone. It's totally fine because I understand I'm about to drag everybody through this nightmare, and he was like, no, we're going to do it together. Whatever we do, we are going to do together. So we decided that we were going to keep the baby and we were going to try everything we could do to donate his organs and donate his heart. At this time I thought heart. And I got the idea from the internet because something happened with another baby, not the same case. So when I went back to my doctor and they're like, okay, what's your decision? Are we going to put you in the next room? And I'm like, no, I think I'm going to carry to term. You don't want to do that. That's such a risk to your health. That's it was just like this doomsday because it was inconvenient. And I remember looking at the lady like, no, I want to donate organs. Well, okay, you know what? One of my really good friends has runs the organ donation place in town, and I'll give him a call. And she leaves the room. She's like, yeah, sorry. He said that they can't do it because these babies are generally too small and yada, yada, all these reasons of why not, right? Nobody was telling me. And I'm like, okay, fine. At this point, I had to follow up. I went to my regular OB and then I went to my perinatologist. And my regular OB, I ended up that following month, like just missed an appointment. I had the flu. They never called me. They never checked up on me. I didn't do what they wanted me to do. And again, this is just how I feel. So they completely ignored me. So I marched into my perinatologist and I'm like, this is what I'm doing. If you don't respect it, that's fine. I'll have the baby at home. I don't care. Right. So either you become my OB, I had to be my own advocate and kind of bully this other doctor. Either you become my OB or I'll do this on my own. I'll hire a midwife. And at that point, she's like, you know what? That's fine. Great. If that's what you want to do, I support you 100%.
Nice.
I have a friend that, in fact, works at that very same company. So she got me in touch, with the hospice people. Had to have hospice involved because whenever there's a death, no matter the case, there's a homicide investigation and, so to avoid all that, you get hospice involved. So that way all those legalities don't have to follow.
I'm sure that was helpful too.
Right. And then, we were set up with counseling, and all this time, like, it was really rough for us. Not only we lost 2 grandfathers, we lost a baby. Our daughters were just completely devastated. Family did not agree that I was carrying this pregnancy to term. They thought we were just causing unneeded trauma to our daughters.
Sure.
And whereas we spun it with them like, let's make memories, let's try to make the best of us, let's give him the most unconditional love we could possibly give him on his little short time on earth. I'm not going to make that decision. It's up to him and God, or what,
Mhm.
the universe, whatever you believe. We're not particularly religious.
Sure.
um, so for us in our home, it was an okay thing. Like, it was making the best out of
Yeah.
out of the scenario. But for a lot of people around us, they did not agree, and they made it known, and it didn't help.
Mhm.
And at that point, we felt abandoned. We felt alone. And already you really feel alone, especially if you've never met anybody who's had gone through this or lost a baby. Luckily, when I did put my post out, and I put on Facebook at the time, a girlfriend of mine that I had worked with 10 years ago reached out and was like, you know what? I lost a baby to the same diagnosis 2 years ago. So we had an unexpected friend. They were so gracious, like checking in on us. But it was hard, so emotionally, on so many different levels. And with the family, I understand. I get the wanting to protect and
Yeah.
everything. But at the same time, my thing was, you guys can go home and sleep with yourselves at night. You get to tuck yourselves in your bed and rest your head on your pillow. And maybe the thought of our son will come across your mind. Maybe it won't, but I promise you, it will come across ours every single
Right.
night, and we have to do what's right for us.
Right. And it is the most personal of all decisions. I mean, you can't no there's no right or wrong decision. It's what's best for
Right.
you and what you feel in your heart is the right way to go, and both decisions are correct.
Right,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
And for my girlfriend, she made the decision to be induced.
Right.
She found out after her anatomy scan, and it was very.
Yeah.
We both respected each other's
Yeah.
decisions.
You
Yeah,
just see the difficulty in both of it because it's just not gonna be easy no matter what.
no matter
Right.
no matter what. And losing a child, no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't think one's bigger than the other,
Yeah.
but then I do. When I meet someone's like, I lost a grown child, I don't know how you could have lost a baby. And I'm like, I don't know how you could have lost a grown child
Sure.
when there's a personality and love and character and memories
Mhm.
attached. Like, I think that's the ultimate loss, is losing a living child.
Mhm.
And it's just the appreciation for loss,
Mhm.
parental loss,
Mhm.
is something to be appreciated, um,
Yeah.
because it's hard, no matter what. At this point, it was hard. It was a rough few months. The perinatologist that I had was just the absolute most wonderful. She had three other cases at the same time. And this was something that they say, oh, you see one in 20,
Yeah.
right? 1 in 20 years. Like, this is very rare. This is like 1 in 300,000, 500,000. Like, it's not common. It's rare.
Yeah.
And going back through my pre-med classes, I remember seeing, like, to this day, I can remember the picture in the textbook. It was just this little blip, like, and it showed a picture. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that could happen to me.
Yeah.
Like, never. So the perinatologists, they were really great, good people, connected us with that same organization where the head honcho guy said they couldn't do it. They hooked us up with a nurse that stayed with us for the rest of the time. So at this point, this is all happening in November, right before Christmas, right before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, we didn't participate. I told my husband I can't be around people,
Yeah.
because we found out on Veterans Day. I'm crying every second of every day, like, I'm just beside myself. So we go have Thanksgiving fishing in a
Yeah.
local lake, just being one with nature, and kind of just digesting, because we still, at this point, it's 16 weeks, we still have a few more weeks to make the decision. At this point, we could do a induction. So, of course, that wasn't, once I have my mindset, it's set, it's not changing.
Mhm.
But my husband, hey, are you okay? Are you sure? Is this what we want to do? He was so, oh my God, amazing and supportive. So we get to the point where I'm still getting the infusions. I'm still just trying to make peace with it. It was really hard going out in public. Oh, you're pregnant. Congratulations. And it's like, thanks, and you
Mm.
have to like swallow that lump in your
Yeah.
throat. And I remember a lot of our close people around us knew, our employees knew, and everybody, they were so kind. But then we'd get that one off friend that would come up and it'd be like, oh, wow, I bet, what are you having? And we're like, oh boy, oh, I bet he's so excited to throw a football with him and teach him football. And then it'd be like, well, he's not going to have a chance to do that,
Yeah.
and then we'd have to have that hard conversation. So it just didn't come as a surprise later. So we get through the pregnancy, and at this point, nobody really, I remember going through feeling alone. Like nobody talks about this. No one talks about these journeys. And while the hospice workers had connected me with an organization, there was an organization called Isaiah's Promise, and they would send us like packages every like month. And it would have like books for the kids on losing a
Mm.
baby. It would have little bracelets with his name on it. For Christmas, I'll never forget, they sent us like these handmade ornaments with his name. So, like, along the way, they were helping you make memories. They sent us a handmade christening
Mm.
gown made out of donated wedding dresses. Just
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful stuff. They did send us a box right after he was born that to this day we still haven't opened. It's with the box of his things. Eventually we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
We get to the point where it's about time to have baby. And I'm like, okay, well, after doing all these groups, and I'm in like 20 different Facebook groups where all these moms all over the world are going through this, and they're telling their stories, and some of their babies are living. At that point there was a little girl who was 4 years old. Like
Wow.
the skin grew over her head and she was 4 years old, completely breathing machine, feeding tube, the works. So just to kind of clarify what anencephaly is, anencephaly, and for him in his case, right here is where the development stopped. So he didn't have this part of his head or brain. It stopped. So in those very early days of development, there's the neural tube, and they close at both ends. One's the top and one's the bottom. This is the severe neural tube defect
Mm.
for anencephaly. Spina bifida is also, it's the same thing, it's just on the opposite end.
Okay.
And that severity differs, but with the scope of that diagnosis, they almost always survive spina bifida.
Mm.
There are those rare cases where there's conjoining defects, but with anencephaly, it's like a 99% rate
Right.
of death.
Yeah.
Like there, it's just, it's not happening.
Right. And
So
it can be in a
giving
lot
that,
of different ways where it's mostly formed, partially formed. There could be a full brain, partial brain.
yeah. And there's different cephalies, if you
Sure.
will. Cephaly meaning head.
Yeah.
There's some with hydrocephaly, that's where the water on the brain and the
Mhm.
head. There's some where maybe the brain develops, but they do have skin. There's a wide range of scopes, and we were hoping that maybe we get the other end of
Sure.
the scope of the cephalic diagnosis. But unfortunately, ours was really, really bad. Like we got the ultrasounds, we saw the frog eyes. Like
Yeah.
they kind of have like little buggy eyes. There was just nothing where his eyebrows were supposed to be.
Sure.
So with that, going to my OB, I was like, hey, I want a C-section. you know
Yeah.
I want to have a C-section. I want to have him. And for me, I'm doing everything I possibly can to get a few minutes,
Yeah.
or to
Right,
get,
because the
some people
trauma
are
of a vaginal birth, I would think, would be that would be it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Okay.
It was just, it was like I wanted anything I could
Yeah.
do that wouldn't think, because you'd think the vaginal birth would be like, would hurt him,
Right, right. It's a lot of there's a lot of twists and turns and tight spaces for that little head. Yeah.
for sure. And I was told, no, sorry, that's too dangerous for you. And
Mm.
I looked at her and I'm like, that's funny, because my girlfriend's on her third baby right now.
Right.
And you guys are signing her up, and she's getting to pick the date and the time. And so because my baby's not compatible with life, that's just it. Like,
Mm.
no. And she's like, well, it's a risk to your health. And I understand, but wouldn't having a vaginal birth be a risk to my health too? Because with these babies, there's a lot of complications that arise, shoulder dystocia,
Right.
where they get stuck because they don't have that natural reflex
Mm.
and their body doesn't turn and they get wedged. There's tears, there's bleeding, so you're telling me all these things, but wouldn't a C-section make sense for control? And I'm like, and here I am, I'm no dummy. I wanted to do surgery.
Yeah.
Like
You're
you
like, I
can't
wanted to be
medical
doing these things.
you can't medical phrase me.
Right.
Like I've done all the research and there's no duping me to tell me what's convenient for you. So they would not budge on that. Like they couldn't get it approved. Like it was a nightmare, but it was one of the
Mm.
battles that I'm like, I'm just gonna I'll probably end up having a C-section anyways, right?
Sure.
Let's just
Sure.
hope it's for
Yeah, let's
let's
fight this
just
in the
hope
moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's not, and we'll just put out those good intentions that it's not an
Emergent,
emergency,
yeah.
really bad reason. My life's at stake at this point. Every month I'm going in, I'm having multiple scans. We found out he had a hole in his heart, because with anencephaly, there are other comorbidities that occur. There's a type of dwarfism that happens with them, the hole in the heart, very, very common. The organs outside of the body, that happens as
Mhm.
well. Just things not developing, or at any point his heart could have stopped. He could have passed away in utero. So I get all the way to the end of my pregnancy. We go in like, okay, well, let's induce you a couple days before his due date. It was the end of April. I go in there. I'm in the hospital. They're like, this could take a couple days because at this point, his brain's not making those chemical
Mm.
signals and hormones to tell your body it's time to go into labor. I had to have the Cervidil, which is a
Mhm.
cervical dilator. There was another medication that they gave me too. It was very invasive and talks of the Foley bulb where they manually dilate
Right.
you. And I only say this, I'm sorry not to give TMI, but to any other moms that might be going through
Yeah.
a similar situation where you are induced out of a medical necessity, because again, no one talked about this. No one, I didn't know what to expect. It wasn't like, I mean, I knew from my groups, but I feel like these are things that should have been common knowledge. I only got up to 4 centimeters. And I remember at one point looking at my doctor and I'm like, is this stuff supposed to make you feel like you're having a cramp nonstop? I'm like, I feel like I've been stuck in a contraction for the last 4 hours. At this point, they freak out because that does happen and it can cause your uterus to rupture. And then it's just
Yeah.
not good, not good.
Right.
This whole time, I'm not taking medication. I was trying to be as little medication as possible. I had a doula with me who was doing the whole like shebang thing with the oils
Yep.
and the aromatherapy, which, oh my God, never in a million years believed that until she put that basil on my stomach. It smelled like pizza and I was cramping. So they ended up sending me home because I was in fact having a tetanic contraction and they read my little
Yeah.
contractions, and I guess my monitor was a little wonky and it wasn't picking that up. Like the baseline was picking it up from the top of that contraction, and they didn't realize, like, oh my gosh, let's give it a week or two, because at this point I'm about 40 weeks, and they're like, well, we have a little wiggle room, so let's come back in about 2 weeks, and if this happens again, we'll do the C-section. Come home, here I am, like, here we go again, because leading up to it, it was just like holding our breath, like,
Mhm.
okay, is he gonna make it, packing the bags, making sure we better have outfits, should we get a car seat, what should we do, and we kind of made these decisions of like, well, we'll meet that when we get to that point, then we'll make a
Yeah, you
decision.
can always
We're
buy
not
a
going to be
car
like,
seat. You can always do all those
yeah,
things.
yeah. It was like, we'll go get a car seat, we'll go get a crib, we'll
Yep.
get whatever. My hospice worker was like, don't worry about that. We got you covered. I'll personally go. And we had a lot of people in our corner. We had the organ donation people right there ready to go. We made a lot of friends with the nurses. So when it was time again, those nurses requested to be on my case with my permission. So 2 weeks fly by. Had to go through the whole goodbye things again. And we get all of the nurses. So it's the same staff minus one nurse, but she came in and checked on us when she could. And we had this really amazing nurse who's like, oh my gosh, in my 25 years, I've seen one, or 28, she was 28 years. 28 years, she saw one baby like this. And there was a woman across the hall at the very same time having a baby with the same diagnosis.
Wow.
in this hospital. And she's like, the occurrence of this happening, she's like, it's alarming. I've personally, this will be my, between the two of you, will be my third baby I'm helping attend delivery to, but this is happening a lot. We're like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, that's what I've been reading. Like, there should be more awareness on this. We ended up finally, my body started to progress, and it was about midnight. I got up to about 7 centimeters. After about 2.5 days, I finally accepted an epidural. I didn't want to, but they thought it would help along. And then
Good.
they're like, well, if at this point you need a C-section, this baby has to come out in the next couple days. So it'll just help with
Yeah,
everything,
right.
we'll put you out if we need to. They come in the room and I'm like, I'm feeling a lot of really like a lot of pressure, happen. And they're like, well, the baby's having trouble descending. So without the baby having the rounded portion of his head, it's just flat. So, try to push a square through a round hole. There's friction and
Yeah.
doesn't work. So they're like, we want to pop your waters. So they did that. And they're like, let us know. We'll be watching the monitors. Within 10 minutes, it was like go time. I remember telling my doula, I'm like, I feel something. I feel something. Right. I went from 7 to 10 centimeters in literally less than 15 minutes because it helped bring the baby down. The delivery was really difficult. I ended up getting a very severe tear because, again, he got stuck. He got the shoulder dystocia, one of the things that I was extremely worried about. He got wedged between my tailbone and my pubic bone, and the doctor had to manually move him in that process. Tore down on top of the episiotomy. Again, one of the things that I wish somebody would have told me could have happened, because maybe I would have pressed a little harder for that C-section. I lost a tremendous amount of blood. I had to have the shots in my thighs. It took a while for him to be born. And at that time, when he was born, he had already passed. So it was hard because I had expected
Right.
to have even a minute. And I think I was just so like loopy from the drugs and everything. Because at this point they were giving me Benadryl to sleep because I couldn't sleep. And they thought the sleep, because I wasn't sleeping, my body wasn't relaxing. It was like my body was doing everything it could possibly do to hold on to this baby.
Yeah.
Because that's what you do as a mom.
Yeah.
When you have something that you want so badly. So he had passed, and of course, it took a long time for them to fix everything, and we got to have time with him. Um, we got to have a few hours with him. And after being told so many times that he wasn't going to be big enough, he was almost 6 pounds. The doctor said he would have been 9.5 pound baby had every bit had been developed, and they were able to accept him for organ donation.
Fantastic.
Um, so he ended up being in the hospital and with that organization, the first infant organ donor in that San Diego hospital. And they were so kind and gracious that they had to do it quick. Everything had to be quick to preserve the organs. So we didn't have a whole lot of time in the beginning. But they brought him back to us after, after they took his lungs for cystic fibrosis research, and then they took his 4 valves of his heart for transfer. So they brought him back to us. The hospital gave us something called a coddle cot. So if you or anyone's going to experience a loss of a baby, or you know in advance, ask for it. It's like this little basically cooling system, so that it keeps the baby's body cool to help mitigate the rapid breakdown after death. And it gave us quite a few hours. We were super grateful for. Our girls were able to meet him and hold him for a moment. And then it gave us the time to say goodbye. And then when we were ready, we got to walk him down through the back with the nurses and hand him over. But yeah, it was such an incredible, surreal time, and you just can't prepare for it. Yeah, there's nothing you can do
Right.
to prepare for this type of loss. It's just devastating. So that's kind of where his story it doesn't exactly end because, again, I haven't reached out. So this year he would have been 6 years old. It was the 6th year anniversary, and I haven't reached back out to the Organ Donation Foundation um, because we haven't been ready. My husband especially took it really, really hard. Um, that we don't know what happened. And in order to know what happens, it has to go both ways. And it's hard with babies because the receiving end moms sometimes feel like selfish. They go through a whole slew of these emotions of like, I took life from their baby.
Right.
And, so we did say that we were open to find out, but that we would reach out first. So maybe in due time we'll find out if it worked, or if it didn't, because it's not just because you donate organs doesn't guarantee that there's a transplant or even a successful transplant, because they have a pretty narrow window of time where it needs to happen. So yeah,
What was his name?
his name was Brian, baby Brian. Yeah.
It's special.
So thank you. So yeah, we've come a long way since him. After him, I was definitely never having babies again. Um, yeah. So now we knew the secret sauce, if you will, like to
Yeah.
to to conceive a child was, well, my husband couldn't take testosterone
Right.
therapy, you know. So it took me about 2 years before that it clocked a tick again. And with that, we went through all the genetics. So they said it wasn't a genetic thing. It wasn't
Yeah.
um, it wasn't inherited. It's just a by chance thing. They think it has something to do with folic acid or folate being the natural form of folic acid being the laboratory made. So any pregnancy after that, I would have to be on these skyrocket amounts of folate.
From what I read, there's nothing you can do to cause this. It
No.
just happens, and it's
Yeah.
unfortunate, but with like so many things that we can't cause, there are things we can do to help mitigate it, and folic acid or folate is the number one thing you can try to do to help prevent, but that doesn't mean that
But
because
that
you
doesn't.
didn't do it, you caused it.
Yes.
It's
And even still, there's not a whole lot of research
right.
done, or, I shouldn't say research. It's not that the want isn't there, it's the funding and the
Yeah.
money to go to that, because it's one of those lottery type things. Like
Mm,
you can't know. And it's kind of like Down syndrome. Like they say, well, if you're approaching 40s or you're a geriatric pregnancy,
right.
the chances are higher, but that doesn't mean that
That you caused
a
it.
20-year-old couldn't have a baby like that. So I mean, there's a lot of things we don't know, and don't know the causes of.
Exactly.
um so for us, after him, when I finally decided, like, okay, let's get married, and
Yeah.
we'll try again. Back to back losses, very, very early losses. um and then with my son, I wasn't taking those things. I don't like to take any vitamins or anything like that. I'm just very kind of natural. I'll get it from my food. I eat very healthy.
Sure.
So with my son, I didn't take any of
Mm,
that. I might have taken it for the first couple weeks, but I didn't. And he's perfectly healthy. And the next one, perfectly healthy.
mm,
And that's coming from telling for every pregnancy after, your chances increase. So the first I think you have a 20% chance, a 10% chance the first pregnancy, a 20% chance. So after having a baby like this, your odds are much higher to have
Hmm.
a baby like this. There's some women that were on their third baby, third in a row.
Wow.
And it kind of almost makes me feel like, is this an environmental thing?
Hmm.
Like, is it something we're eating, because it's not exactly, folate is not a
Right.
guarantee of a baby being not healthy or healthy. I think it's got to be something else.
Right.
And I'm hoping in the future we can, as a society, devote more attention to things like this and try to figure out where it's coming from to mitigate the devastation that it causes
Mm.
on families.
Mhm. And what made you decide to try again? Just time? Courage?
Just time. Yeah, my clock ticking
Mm.
my husband was like, okay, whatever you want, whatever. Yeah, okay. Like, but not like that, just to my
Yeah,
face.
yeah.
He's like, I understand. Like, very patient, very kind, very, it's okay, honey. Like, I get it. We have two beautiful girls. Like, if you don't want, that's fine. And look at how early we get to travel because we had
Yep,
our girls in our
yep.
early 20s. Like, we're going to be young grandparents and young, and, and then I was like, okay, maybe we'll try again, but I just don't know, we'll see. And again, when he stopped his therapy back to back, like I'm getting pregnant,
Yeah,
so I'm pretty fertile still.
yeah.
And yeah, it just so we're not gonna be young grandparent. Well, we might
You
still
might
be,
still,
but
you don't know.
we'll probably have teenagers at
Right,
home.
right.
But he's like, I always knew you'd change your minds. You love being a mom and you're great at it. So he's like, I just was gonna be patient, just like I was with the whole marriage thing. My poor husband, I just make him go through the ringer, I guess, with my stubbornness.
Yeah,
And then I always end up folding.
I'm
So
sure he loves you for that. What do you
probably.
do anything special to honor him?
Every year on his birthday. So I don't know if you caught my post on social media. So there's this little mountain town called Julian, and on his father's side, his family helped found it or built the town, or there's some history there. So that at the cemetery there, it's a very historical cemetery. His family has a plot there, so
Oh,
he has. I don't want to say he's buried there. So this is where we're kind of we bring the humor into this, and I'm really sorry to be insensitive, but his headstone's there, but he's still on our bookshelf
okay.
because we can't.
Yeah,
It's still that like
yeah,
like we can't bring him there yet.
yeah,
Like our baby's still on his urn that still in the bag
yeah.
that we had picked him up from the mortuary. Like, so we always joke like that on his birthday every year and Mother's Day too, because his birthday's May 11th, so it always falls Mother's
Mother's
Day
Day.
weekend, if
Oh,
not on Mother's Day.
yeah.
He was born, and then Mother's Day was the next day. Um, so we always joke like we go up there and we visit the headstone, right?
Yeah,
So we have the motions. We go up there, at least every like once a month or 2 months,
sure.
when it snows up there, we go clean it up. In the summer, we go clean the headstone. And then we always like, sing happy birthday and take a picture and and then we all start laughing because we're like, he's not
He's
even
not
here
even
with us. He's at home on the bookshelf. Like
he's missing his own birthday party.
we're like, oh, we'll show him pictures when we get home.
Yeah.
So, we try to keep the humor, I
Mhm.
guess, if you will. But it's really funny because Grandpa was up there too for a long
Yeah.
time. So it was like, we had a new housekeeper, and I was like, okay, so there's one shelf in the house we do not
Yeah,
want
don't
you to
touch it.
touch. And she's like, oh, why? And we're like, well, so this is Grandpa and this is the baby. And she's like,
Ah.
needless to say, she
Yeah,
didn't clean our bookshelf ever.
yeah.
So
That's one way
she
to keep
stayed
her
far
away
away.
from it.
But yeah, it's a crazy story, and
It's really
I
yeah.
hope someone can find. You're not going to find comfort.
No.
It's you're not, but you will feel a little less alone.
Mhm.
Um, And I mean, if you're on Instagram and you're going through this, please reach out. Not everybody wants to talk about it, but I am one of the people that are like, no, I don't want people to feel how I felt.
Yeah.
Like, whatever we can do. I was so scared that another mom was going to feel that devastation of a loss that I pushed so hard for the organ donation. Because if we could have prevented that, I wanted to be that. I wanted him to live on, and what better way, what a better honor, if you will. So yeah, I mean, I just encourage, if it's not me, if it's somebody, like, talking about it, we need to do more of, because I feel like our society, it's not as taboo as it was maybe 10 years ago or even 20 years
Mhm.
ago, but it's still not out there enough. Infant loss
Yeah.
and pregnancy loss is, we have a special month for, but it's still just rocking people's worlds in the worst kind of way, because as much as we teach in schools, we teach sex ed and the birds and the bees and all, we're not talking about taking care of our bodies and being healthy and pregnancy
Right.
loss. And I think we're doing a disservice to our young people who are in schools, and we're not talking about that,
Mhm.
because it happens. I mean, the more you talk about it, the more someone's like, me too, me too, me
Mhm.
too, me too. And you meet all these women, and it's like, then why are we not having these discussions?
Right.
Why are we not? Why are we not more open? We should be celebrating that, the fact there was a life created. Now, it wasn't on the timeline that we wanted. It wasn't, I would much rather have my son here, but that just wasn't his story. That wasn't what it was meant to be.
Right.
So yeah, I think we should talk more about it.
Absolutely. You are an inspirational woman, Shay. Thank you for being
Thank you.
here. Thank you for sharing
Thank
this
you.
story. It's so important and so powerful.
Thank you.
You are brave.
Thank you.
If you have a story about motherhood that you'd like to share, please reach out to me, boldlittleminds@gmail.com. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at boldlittleminds. And definitely reach out to Shay if you have a similar story or you feel like you want to connect about this. I know she is very happy to talk about it with you. Please take a moment to subscribe, leave a rating and review, and please share with your friends and follow me for more episodes with inspiring moms with great stories to tell. Thank you so much. See you next time.